Every now and then I find a gap in my schedule, and sometimes I don't really know what to do with that. And that's what happened with today's video. I was kind of like pondering what I should do. I was waiting for stuff to be delivered for one project. I'd already done stuff for another, and there wasn't really anything to do. So I get to do what I want to do, which now sounds like a strange concept, but genuinely I have to think very carefully about what videos I release, what impact I think they're gonna have, more views, all that kind of stuff. But when a video like today comes along where I just get to go, you know what? I really want to paint my Typhus finally. A model that I built and converted absolutely years ago. I was really happy with the conversion, but I never got around to painting it. So that's what I'm going to do in today's video. I'm going to tackle my Typhus and get it painted to the highest ability that I can achieve, and I'm very excited about it. Before I get into it though, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my active patrons, all of those new patrons that have joined the last 30 days, and everyone out there that supports the channel in a myriad of different ways, whether it's by watching the videos, liking the videos, commenting, making sure that you're subscribed. Those things are all super important. And obviously, guys who are signed up to the Patreon are the ones that keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. So a big extra thank you to you guys. With the Patreon, you of course get a whole bunch of extra benefits. You get access to a private Discord server where you can hang out with me on a daily basis, talk about your hobby, talk about your hobby with 500 other awesome people. We hold community showcases, we do painting competitions, there's paint classes, all sorts of different things over there, as well as an extra video every single week and access to extra podcast episodes as well. And we do giveaways every single month. Last month we gave away an Imperial Night Titan, and this month we are giving away a Real Space Raiders Army Battle Force box set. So if you've ever thought about getting into Dark Eldar and want a chance to win this box set, all you need to do is be signed up to Patreon at any tier. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's dive in and get Typhus painted. And this is my converted Typhus. As you can see, I used some parts from the Nurgle kind of Blight Lord on flying thingies from the Age of Sigmar Nurgle range. The awesome trident, and then the cadaver being reefed up into the air by it screamed Typhus. I think the parts matched the pose perfectly. I always wanted to have him like leading quite a large contingent of poxwalkers. So imagine him like strolling forward with that, and it looks like he's kind of holding aloft a poxwalker, which I think is pretty cool. The model was sprayed black and then sprayed with grey sear. It is the perfect base coat for getting some gross Nurgle work done. And from there we moved over to Plague Bearer Flesh and applied a nice solid coat of this across all of the flat armor panels that you want to be that kind of Nurgling green color. Some other slight modifications I made to Typhus is the kind of host destroyer hive that is kind of quite famous for. They give you parts to have that kind of big swarm of flies swarming around from the funnels on his back. But they do leave you with the option not to include them. And I just thought they detracted from kind of his ferocious look. So I wasn't feeling them, so I just left them off, and I much prefer the look of him without them, to be honest. So I'd love to know in the comments if you guys feel the same. If you built your Typhus, are you including the flies or not? Okay, moving over to a nice Gulliman flesh contrast. We're applying this to all the skin sections of this model. So obviously the cadaver in his hand has got some, and then there is a lot of fleshy areas on Typhus himself. A lot of his tubing and cabling and stuff that connects things I decided to do in flesh just to make it a little bit more gross. And then I decided to make the Nurgling hanging off his belt be skin tone as well, just because if it was green, it's just going to blend in with the armor a little bit too much, and I thought this was a good idea. And he does turn out looking fairly adorable and fairly nice, so I'm kind of happy with that decision. After that, we moved over to Black Templar contrast. For any of the other cabling and stuff that you couldn't sell as a kind of a skin tone, we're going to block that in with some black paint. Also, if there's any kind of other details, any gaps in the armor or anything like that that you want to knock in with the black, you can do that here as well. I also did the belt of the cadaver while I was there, and the one remaining boot that he had. Agros Dunes was then brought in for all of the bone sections of this. So he's got a lot of protuberance from his armor, lots of horns poking through, and then obviously the destroyer hive in my head is a big kind of bone construct out his back, all those funnels which the destroyer hive emerge from. So I decided to do those in bone as well. Bone and that Nurgling green always sit really well together, so it makes kind of a perfect color choice for that. From here, it's time to block in some of the metallics. So Balthazar Gold was brought in. Now, obviously, Death Guard being Chaos Space Marines, lots of trim on his armor. And these guys tend to lean more heavily towards kind of brasses and bronzes as opposed to silvers. So with that in mind, we are going to go in with that Balthasar Gold and knock in all the trim sections of his armor. Any of the Nurgle symbols as well. He's got a fly motif on one of his shoulder pads. And there's a few other bits and pieces kind of poking throughout the armor. There's a Nurgle symbol on the end of the trident. So I did that in that color as well. So just kind of pick and choose the metallics, which ones you want to be bronze, and then which ones, of course, you want to be silver. For the silver, we just used lead belcher and blocked in all the other sections that you decided not to do in bronze in that. So he's got this kind of interesting kind of collar section on his armor with some tubing running through it. So I made the tubing was black and around that was silver, which was kind of cool. Obviously the trident top, and then he's like got like big gas tanks on his back and bits like that. So they're all going to be blocked in with silver. You'll notice the topography under his feet got a little bit changed between this shot and the last. Obviously he was sat on top of two pieces of cork that weren't really kind of blended down or melded very well. So I took a minute or two of the clippers to kind of pull it apart and smooth it out and make it look a little bit more natural than just, you know, two stacks of cork sat over each other. Agrak's Earthshade was then introduced and the entire model was shaded down. You will notice that a few extra details have gotten painted in. Militarum green was used for the fatigues on the cadaver, and then some sort of khaki color was used for his vest. I basically wanted to look like he was a captured Cadian that this guy was reefing into the air and torturing and stuff like that. As grim as that is, obviously it's a City of Sigmar model in real life, so obviously you just change the color schemes around and it actually works quite well. I have added the texture paste to the base, hence why I fixed the cork basing a little kind of a moment ago, just so I could put on some nice texture paste and it blend in just a little bit better. With all of that dry, it is now time to start the fun layering process of painting this miniature. That's why I said fun, because I really enjoy layering. We're going to do the armor first. It's 3 more steps to get it fully painted, and they're all quite quick. Death Guard green is the first one, and all we're going to do is do kind of sharp, scratchy lines across the armor panels, kind of blocking it in and kind of punching that armor up a little bit more. As you can see, it is pushing it much more into a pallid looking armor tone. That's not exactly what I want the final step to be. I do have a secret weapon which transforms Nurgle armor with the way, and no one else paints them like this. I think it's just me. Maybe I'm insane, I don't know, but I just find it to work really well and give you a really nice result. So with that scratching kind of mid-tone highlight put on, we're going to go into Nurgling green and repeat the process, but obviously a lot less. We're just going for some fine scratchy lines, obviously following the kind of shape and contours of the armor to get it to kind of the right positions and the right tone, because the next coat that we're going to put on is very translucent, so these lines will show through. So do take your time and make sure you get them looking nice before you move on to the next step. And for the next step, we are going to introduce Lamenter's Yellow Glaze. This is just a yellow glaze. Now, I know Games Workshop does not sell Lamenter's Yellow Glaze. That is okay. Too Thin Coats does an alternative yellow glaze that works absolutely the same. I have tested it myself. So if you don't have any Lamenters left in your old painting kits, just order up some of the Lamenter's Yellow Glaze, the yellow glaze from Too Thin Coats, and that will do the job. And as you can see, as soon as we apply this yellow glaze over the top of the pallid kind of greens and bones that we've done, it transforms the armor into what I consider to be the perfect Death Guard kind of hue of armor. It looks toxic, it looks gross, it looks awesome, and I'm really pleased with that as a result. Okay, for skin tones, Cadian Flesh Tone, Berserker Bloodshade, and Kislev Flesh. These are the 3 colors we are going to use to punch up all the skin tones across this model. Now, obviously, we are going to take our time. We're going to start with the Cadian Flesh Tone and very carefully layer up all the different sections, obviously taking special care with the cadaver because it's a front-facing part of the model. It's a thing that people will look at when they pick up the model. And, of course, his Nurgling deserves his attention. All Nurglings deserve, like, uncountable amounts of attention. So I am going to make sure that I highlight his little butt even perfectly, and he's looking super cool and fresh before we go on to the next stage. So obviously this is, once again, like I said before, quite a pallid tone, going from a contrast to a kind of like a brown shade and then straight into a Cadian. There's not a lot of kind of warmth left in it. And I know it's kind of funny to say Nurgling skin or cadaver skin needs to have a little bit of warmth, but I do like there being some warmth in skin. So this is where that Berserker Bloodshade comes on. I like to off a wet palette for it so it's slightly thinned down, and then I just apply this as a solid coat over all the skin parts on the model, even those hoses in the armor and everything like that. This will add a nice red tone to the skin. That means when we go back in with that Kislev flesh as our final highlight, it really does make it pop. But as you can see, I put on quite a small amount of it. We're just going for really sharp highlights, and we get across the cadaver parts, even those same scratchy lines we did on the green armor, we're going to do over like the pectoral muscles, the bicep and shoulders and stuff, any of those kind of flatter sections. But we're not going to go crazy. We don't need too much to make this part of the model stand out. He's really starting to come along now. We're coming into the home stretch. There's only a couple of steps left to really finish this model off. So Screamer Pink and Pink Horror are used on his cloth parts. I don't think we remembered to kind of record the cloth parts, but Volupus Pink was used on all of the cloth sections of this armor in the base coat section. And then we go in with Screamer Pink and give it a light highlight there. And then after that's fully dry, we just go in with a little bit of Pink Horror and do kind of the edges and tatters of that. While we're there, we also did things like the Nurgling's tongue in the same color, and a little bit in like the holes and gaps in the cadaver where his kind of chest is rent open. We're going to hit with those same two colors just to make those pinky tones pop a little bit more. Lead Belcher was then used to highlight all of the metallics, both the kind of brass sections and the silver sections. And just like those scratchy highlights we did before, we're going to do exactly the same thing. So as you can see, as I'm coming in with the brush, we're just going to catch sharp edges or just add a few dots around other kind of key parts just to make it pop. Corners and like rivets and stuff like that. We're just going to do a tiny touch of silver. Pallid Witch Flesh is now going to be used to highlight that awesome white helmet that he has. Obviously it's white, but it's dirty and decayed and stuff, so we didn't touch it in the base coat stage. It stayed the same gray sear we used when we primed the model. We were just careful not to hit it with any of the other paints. And then it got washed with a brown Agaric Earthshade, and then we're just going in with a Pallid Witch Flesh. So the keyword there is like pallid. It's going to keep it quite drab, which obviously sat next to all the green armor and the Nurgle stuff. It works a treat. And that's the only step we're going to do for the helmet. One coat of Pallid Witch Flesh over the top of the helmet makes it look great. Ushapti Bone and Screaming Skull were then brought in for kind of the very last steps of this model, apart from some oxide we'll do in a moment, to highlight up all of those bone sections we did. So every single horn that's protruding through his armor, and then obviously the big giant destroyer hive coming out of his back. And then make sure you focus on the horn on the helmet as well. Obviously the majority of the horn is covered up by a giant metal spike, which we painted Lead Belcher earlier, but there's a bit between the bottom of the spike and the top of the helmet, which obviously needs to get highlighted at that stage as well. Like I said, we're going now in with Nilic Oxide, which is just going to be used on a few of those kind of brass and silver areas just to add a tiny extra pop of color and a little bit more in that kind of worn down, decayed look, which of course is synonymous with the Death Guard. So I'm not going to go crazy with this. I think the model for itself already is looking quite nice. I don't need to overpower or take your attention away from the green armor or the awesomely painted cadaver, if I do say myself. So I'm going to be quite sparing with this. And with that, we have our finished Typhus, first captain of the Death Guard, favored son of Nurgle. An absolute beast of a model in game terms. One of my favorite Chaos Lieutenants, like full stop. I love him so much. And I'm so pleased that I finally got to carve out a day for me and get this model, which was converted, I must say, 5 or 6 years ago, to finally get a full coat of paint and be ready to lead my Death Guard army into battle. I've always said when I do a Death Guard army, this guy will lead it, not Mortarion, and I will stick to that. Thank you guys so much for sticking around at the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one.